Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the DVC show. Coming up, we're going to talk about why we bought DVC. Hey everyone, and welcome. Coming to you from the Bob Varley studio in Orlando, Florida. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined this week by my good friends from DVC Store, Mr. Jerry Saito.
Hello, everybody.
Via Skype, Mr. Paul Krieger.
Hey, everyone.
And our producer, Mr. Corey Fiasconaro.
Welcome home.
And as usual, before we get started, if you are interested in purchasing a DVC resale, renting DVC points, or selling your DVC contract, reach out to our friends at dvcstore.com or give them a call, 1-800-550-6493. So we thought, because I guess we haven't done this show, have we?
No.
It's just so funny that we never did this show.
Why 80 plus episodes, and no, we didn't do it.
Has it really been 80 some odd episodes?
Yeah, this would be episode, if it goes up in order, 82. This would be 82.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, in 82 episodes, we've never talked about why we bought DVC. Now, I know my process for buying DVC was kind of played out on the show. If you go back, because we started the show February of 2019, if you go back and look at, I think, if you go right back and watch the first 3 episodes, you can follow my progression. I was not a DVC member at the time we started, but by the 3rd episode, I think I had talked myself into it. Because now for you, that was 3 episodes that played out over 3 weeks. For me, that was 3 episodes that played out over a day, because we usually record 3 or 4 of these at a time. And, they're pre-recorded, obviously. And so for me, that was like one sitting.
By the end of the day, he was ready.
Yeah. And I think it was very shortly thereafter. And if you hear noise, there's rain. But by the end, within a few days of that, I think,
Yep.
I put in for my first contract, Boulder Ridge. And it, and oh God, such a great deal. It was $89 a point.
Yeah.
It was 200 and some odd points. It was awesome.
Yeah. I have people calling me actually trying to get the same deal. They'll see a Boulder Ridge and like, I heard Pete got it for 89. I want to make an offer of 89. So,
Well, I got it at 89 because it was a foreign seller.
Yeah. And they were willing to negotiate it down.
They were willing to negotiate.
Yeah.
So the, I obviously knew about DVC, was very well versed in DVC. Back in the day when John Magi, who was my business partner, and then he was my life partner, we had bought DVC together. He got it in the divorce. Well, in those days, we'd have to use air quotes with divorce. So I knew about DVC. I was knowledgeable about it to a degree. But it was as we started doing these shows and I started talking about it, researching it more. And I mean, I went from no points in February of 2019 to about 12 or 1,300, I think I have now. And that was by June. That was all in a very short span of time. And I've never looked back and I've never regretted it. Never regretted it. So, and really the decision process was, I guess I didn't realize how much more of a value it was to me as someone who stays on property all the time versus getting hotel rooms, because that's what I would always do. And, I liked staying in deluxe resorts. And, I think it was one of the comments you made about, you're renting that room and throwing your money away because when you're done and you've spent that $3,000 or $4,000 on your room for the week, all you have to show for it is memories and a few souvenirs. Whereas that same $4,000 applied to Disney Vacation Club, well, and considering how we use it for work, how I use it for the guys. I think pretty much everybody now
Yeah.
has stayed. Everybody who works for me stayed at a DVC resort. Most everybody through that. After I bought those points, and especially in the age of COVID, that was all. You pay once basically. I mean, you have your dues every year, but still the way I use it, the way we use it, it made a lot of financial sense. Plus, it was really fun to be part of a new club.
Yeah.
And after 20 plus years of covering Disney professionally, having something new was a really cool experience. So, yeah, I'm a year and a half in. I'm a newbie, but have not regretted that decision at all. Paul, what about you? Why did you join DVC?
My wife. No, in all serious, Amy was a large part to do with it. Growing up, I had been to Disney multiple times, fell in love with it, fell in love with the magic that was there. And I always look back and remember the first trip that I went with Amy. It was both of our families went to Orlando. We rented a house for the week. We literally had a one-day ticket to Walt Disney World, and we park hopped between Epcot and Magic Kingdom. And that experience shocked me because she didn't come away from that with the same feeling that I had for Disney. And looking back on it, I can understand that because you weren't immersed in Disney the way we did that vacation. We then, a couple years later, went back, stayed at a moderate resort, and that's when it began for her. That's when she began to fall in love with Disney. And we took a couple trips like that, staying at moderate resorts. And the final one we took before we purchased DVC, I remember two big things. First, I remember walking around that entire trip laughing every time I saw a DVC booth, thinking, oh, I'm never going to do that. And then I also remember looking at resorts like the Grand Floridian and saying, wow, it would be so cool to stay there, but it costs me like my left kidney to stay there. And we came home, and literally a month after that trip, we were looking at DVC contracts, and we were online shopping for those. And so we purchased Disney Vacation Club because it made those things that felt untouchable and unreachable a reality. We've now stayed at all of those deluxe resorts, and we know that for our entire lives, we're going to get to keep going back to those. And as Jerry mentioned a little bit earlier, it's saving us a huge amount of money. We're not spending money and wasting it on a stay. We're invested, and we're getting the price and the value of those deluxe resorts for the same price that we were staying at Coronado Springs and Port Orleans and things like that. So that's my wife is why we bought Disney Vacation Club.
I just want to go on the record and say my work is done. Thank you, guys. That's exactly why you buy into Disney Vacation Club.
I also, I just want to mention, especially when you've stayed on property as often as I have. I do it for a living, so, there's that. But when you've stayed on property as often as I have, when I did that first stay, this has never gotten old, by the way. I did that first stay with my mom at Boulder Ridge. We did a vlog on it. It was awesome. Loved that vlog. On checkout day. On checkout day, and you get you get your bill. And it was just whatever you charge to the room. Now, yes, of course, we pay our dues. We pay a lot of money to join in. But there was something about that. Like, oh, wow, I can get into this.
Yeah.
I can get into this. That has never gotten old. Every single DVC stay, it's the same thing. And I've actually gone out of my way on a couple of stays not to charge anything to the room, just put it on my credit cards, so that I can get a bill that says 0.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's, again, it's psychological because, of course, you're paying for it. But those payments are broken up over time. You know, I'm not paying for it all at once. It makes it a lot more manageable in terms of having, because, you know, look, when you come to Disney, room is only one part of it, right? You know, you've got food, you've got, you know, the other things you want to do that can easily run into the thousands of dollars depending on the size of your family and what you like to do. And so having that other expense kind of spread out over the course of a year really made all the difference. I mean, it makes a huge difference. Fiasco?
Yeah. So, I mean, like Paul mentioned, when I was in the theme parks throughout the years and I saw the DVC kiosks and stuff like that, I was always like intimidated. And I would just like kind of push it off and be like, that's never something that's ever going to cross my mind. I mean, it's probably so much money.
Well, especially you, because you have like the first nickel you ever made.
Yeah, no, that too. But it was like when we started to do these shows, and I've gotten to watch most of them in live time, by the way. So there's that. We've kind of made it, I feel like, more approachable. Speaking for myself, I'm sure for a lot of other people, we've made the prospect of buying something like DVC more approachable and more understandable and more of like a one-stop shop for lots and lots of information about DVC. And I mean, I've just been learning as we've been recording. Like, as we've been recording all these shows, that's like I've been learning about DVC through you guys. Not to mention, Pete bought DVC right before I decided to, so I got to go experience a lot of the cool things that went along with that and being part of that club. Top of the World Lounge is just like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And for people that have been coming to Disney for years and years and years, they always look up to that and they're like, it would be so cool to be able to go do that. And being the person that when your family and friends are visiting to say, I can take you up there is just the coolest thing ever. Not to mention, you know, I moved here because of my love for Disney and wanting to live here in Disney. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to stay at the resorts. For about 15 trips in a row, too, we've stayed at All Stars every single time. And if we were feeling really frisky, you know, maybe Pop Century or Port Orleans French Quarter. And I always say, like, I always stuck up for All-Star Music. I joke around before I owned DVC that was my home resort is All-Star Music, just because of how many times we've stayed there. But like Paul mentioned, like me and my wife, we'd be on our vacation, be like, oh, it'd be so cool to stay at the Grand Floridian. Like, it'd be so cool to stay at Bay Lake Tower, Polynesian. Like, can we stay at the Polynesian one day? And then we look at the prices and we're like, no, we can't. Like, it's like, want to come here for a weekend? Or do you want to do like a full week and stay at a value resort? And DVC opens up that option to be able to stay anywhere and stay different places every time. And, you know, it just changes that completely. And even though I live here, I still want to do those staycations because there's pros and cons to living here as far as how you experience the parks. The pros far outweigh the cons, but the cons do still exist. And you definitely, unless you go out of your way to try to, you experience it differently. And in order to experience the parks like I would when I was vacationing here from out of state, DVC is how I do that. So,
Jerry?
So my experience, I think, is a little different because I was selling Disney Vacation Club for 4 years before I ever actually owned. So, you know, I started at the timeshare store in 2000. I bought my first contract in 2004. And it was really because I was selling the idea of these great vacations, but not actually doing it myself. And I had been going to Disney since I was 12 years old, you know, and in 2004 I was 29. So I'd always had an annual pass.
Everybody's doing the math.
Yeah. So the point is I was not practicing what I was preaching, so to speak. So I was like, it's time for me to buy a contract and really get into this to find out, you know, I can give personal experience. I can tell people how it works on a more personal level. So that's, and not to mention, I also got married that year and I foresaw, you know, having children and, you know, having my children experience what I did when I was young and taking them to Disney and having those experiences. So I bought in to really connect with my customers, but then also in doing that, it's kind of like what Paul said. Like it made the untouchable reality. Like Grand Floridian, it didn't exist back then, but like, you know, the Polynesian didn't exist. But staying at like various resorts that were just so expensive that I really never thought I'd be able to stay at, has really opened the door. Yeah, I say this to a lot of customers that it's like staying on a value budget, but at deluxe properties. Like you get to experience things for a fraction of what it would normally cost you. So anyway, point is, I bought in because I wanted to experience it so I could relate to my clients, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I love it. I ended up buying. I was over 1,100 points at one time because I couldn't get enough, and then I realized, okay, kind of pull it back a little bit. So now, 230 points is what I have. So I
Oh wow, you pulled it back a lot.
I did, but I realized what I needed. I was only, I was going regularly, and then I realized, you know what, I'm going to do staycation, weekend vacation. So then I dialed it back a bit, but
Yeah.
but I love it.
Now you just convinced Pete to buy points.
Yeah, really. Well, not now. A, I'm at enough. B, that's not where my money's going these days. But oh wow, okay. So the skies are speaking to us. Yeah, I as anybody, being fully honest, ever any regrets?
Never, not a one.
Absolutely not. No. And I eventually want to buy another contract eventually.
Well, you just bought a house, so
Yeah,
you
so-
might have to hold off for a little bit. Paul, no regrets?
No regrets at all. We've added on multiple times, and every time get an email coming through from Jerry in the DVC store, and again Amy sends me and says, "Whoa, that's a nice contract." So
Oh yeah.
we're still in the we love it, and I don't know if we're finished yet. We're finished for now. I think our next step is more along the lines of what Fiasco just did, but I think down the line we might buy more.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, there you have it, folks. That's why we bought DVC. And down in the comments below, please tell us why you bought DVC. And also do us a favor, if you can hit that subscribe button and especially that like button. Hit that like button because that helps us out with YouTube. So, thanks, folks. Appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again next week with another edition of the DVC Show. Have a great week.